Welcome to Vibrility's The Drop Zone podcast, and we got Mayor Michael Caldwell here. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate the invitation today.
You bet. I appreciate you accepting it and coming today. Just a little background. I am one of the founders and owners of Vibrility in downtown Woodstock. We call this the Drop Zone because I'm an old paratrooper. So you know, that seemed apropos, and I always say we appreciate you dropping in. So
I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the opportunity and grateful for your service.
Yeah, thank you. So I met you at Monday Morning Brews.
Yes, sir.
And spoke well, and I loved everything you had to say. I said, I got to talk to that guy. I want to get him on here and kind of get some insight. And we were talking before recording the podcast, and I like your unique perspective on things when we're talking about it. I guess maybe too, being in politics, you kind of understand there's another layer of perspective on things.
Sure.
I was a little surprised to hear you're 35.
Yes, sir.
lot of wisdom to be 35.
Oh, I'm grateful.
Yeah, there is. Appreciate you being mayor. I think it's one of those deals to where it gets a little bit vilified. People don't want to go into politics, and that's a problem.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It's just like same thing in serving our in the military. It's they're having a tough time with recruitment now, and I think these are all problems. When we start pulling away, it creates problems. I think, right? So,
well, yeah, I think that's endemic to a larger problem nationwide right now, and that it's not just public service that's becoming unappealing, although we are seeing that between the military and elected office and police officers and firefighters, all these roles, teachers. Well, who would ever want to go into these jobs today, right? True. I mean, God bless the people who take them on. But I think this is sort of the pattern of if you look at America 3 generations ago, we went from the city pool to the neighborhood pool to the backyard pool.
Yeah.
Right? So how have we watched ourselves become more and more reclusive and less plugged into the community? And I have a lot of ideas around why and how we've gotten there, but I won't take you down a rabbit hole just yet.
Well, that's okay. We were talking. I hope we can get together and do this again.
Yeah.
And go down some rabbit holes. I think they're fascinating. My degree's in sociology with a minor in history.
Okay.
And here I am, a custom builder and a realtor and a brokerage owner.
The way it's supposed to go.
Yeah, that's right. But I love history like that. And when you just said, that's what I was saying I like about you. You got a unique way of looking at perspectives, and that's how I do too. I don't like to see what's just on the surface. There's reasons for those things, and like you said, that's sort of how generationally we've been going,
right? Pulling
away from being community and connected,
right?
But if you listen, social media, they say you're connected.
Right.
We're not connected at all. This is connected.
Right.
Right.
You are simultaneously more connected and informed than you've ever been, and yet you are less socially connected and less accurately informed.
Is that fascinating?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just interesting.
It's a broken dynamic for sure.
It is a broken dynamic, and I think hopefully there's a way we get some folks to figure out how to bridge that gap or whatever, especially coming up on this presidential election and where everybody is, and I'm the same way. I am not what do you say, I'm very political. I've listened to it and I have all my opinions,
absolutely.
And I think everybody does, but I try not to get into it too much and let it just overcome or overwhelm you, because I just don't think it's good for your everyday life.
Agreed.
There's more important things. So but that's awesome, unique perspective. And what I want to talk about, and I do with every guest, is I want to know a little bit about you. And I like to know about you, your wife, how y'all met, your kids. You have 3 kids, is that right?
We sure do.
So I was reading a little bit about it. So just give me a little brief, just nutshell rundown. Where'd you meet your wife?
Yeah.
Where'd you go to school? Where'd you grow up? Just basic. And then I never like things that are so, it's almost like, it's kind of like going on a date or something is what I really like. You know what I mean? Just tell me about yourself and let's talk. And
it's the weirdest first date I've ever been on, but I'm happy to take it. Well, you and I are the weirdest first date I've ever been on. But yes, I can say really.
That is a fair point.
I'm Michael. I grew up here in Woodstock.
Okay.
Now I say that I was born in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Lived in Michigan. Yeah, go blue. Lived in Michigan, California, Texas, North Carolina, Georgia. I did each of them multiple times. My dad was an Air Force brat, and I think nobody ever told him he could stop moving. So we just kept doing that.
No kidding.
But he was in software. He was starting software companies across the country. Did a lot of travel through his career, and so that kept us hopping.
Gotcha.
I did.
So there's the tie-in with the software.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah, definitely got my entrepreneurial bug from my dad.
Right on.
So I did a portion of elementary school here. I was actually first grade class at Bascom Elementary.
No kidding.
Left and then came back again, and I did middle and high school here. I married my high school sweetheart, so I met Katie at Etowah.
Me too.
Did you really?
I went to Sprayberry and married my high school sweetheart.
There aren't enough of those stories anymore.
Seriously.
So
awesome.
Katie and I started dating at Etowah. We both went to Kennesaw State. I got my 4-year finance degree in 2.5 years at Kennesaw.
That's fantastic. I did read that. That's
at the
knocking
time,
it out.
At the time, I think it was a state record. I have no idea whether that's true now, and it turns out that's worth nothing but a job. So for everybody listening, enjoy college. You don't have to rush through that. But Kennesaw was great to me. I'm a huge fan of my alma mater.
Me too. That's my alma mater too.
Awesome.
Go Owls.
Yep, go Owls.
Right
I'm on the President's Community Advisory Board now for Kennesaw, and I'm a huge fan of the institution. I think what they've managed to do in the last decade, even what they've done over the last several decades is amazing, but the last decade has just been exponential.
For sure.
And so the brightest days are ahead for them. So that's exciting for
Were
all
you
of
there
us.
when Betty was there?
I was. Yep, I was.
Me too.
I was there for Betty. I was there for President Papp for a period there.
Yep.
And then, but I graduated in 2010 from Kennesaw.
Okay.
It was a great time to graduate with a finance degree right in the heart of a recession caused by finance majors. So made for an adventure of a career start.
That's a fair point.
But so we'll talk. I'm sure we'll talk through career, both public and private sector.
Yeah.
But we have 3 children. We've got a 9-year-old boy, Oliver, a 5-year-old girl, Elizabeth, and a 2-year-old girl, Charlotte. We live in the heart of downtown Woodstock. We're right in the neighborhood in Hedgewood there behind the condo building.
Yep.
We're in one of the stand
behind Pure and all that stuff.
Sir. Yep. We love it down there.
It's great.
My business is about 2,500 feet from me, so I can walk to work most days.
That's nice.
Everybody should do it.
Right.
And so, yeah.
Do you actually walk to work or do you ride a golf cart?
I used to drive a golf cart more days than I didn't. I drive about half the days, and comically, the only reason I have to drive is for the mayorship. So I had to drive today because I had to get over to here.
Of course.
I'll drive because I serve on the Atlanta Regional Commission and the Georgia Technology Authority. Those will take me down to Atlanta.
Of course.
And so it's comical the amount of time I have to have the car out there, not because of private sector or personal life, but because the mayorship makes it so I have to drive. I live in downtown Woodstock. I work in downtown Woodstock, and somehow it's the city job that takes me out of it.
That's funny. It's a great place, though.
It is I'm hopeful I'm going to spend a chunk of time today showing off Woodstock, and I know that the fun of being in Woodstock is I get to show off a place that everybody already knows is amazing. But we were 4,500 people in our city limits in 1990. We are 40,000 today.
That's incredible.
It's grown by 10 times in 30 years. But the cooler,
10x.
Isn't that amazing? But
it's amazing.
The cooler number is we had nearly 3 million visitors to our downtown last year.
Wow.
So we're one of the most visited downtowns in southeastern United States now. We rank with cities that we just dramatically outkick our coverage on that front. We are the destination shopping district in North Georgia.
Well,
now.
Anecdotally, I'll tell you, I know that to be the case. It's fascinating to hear the data and the numbers, so I appreciate you sharing those because anecdotally, we'll go to Atlanta or Alpharetta for real estate and housing events, and everybody knows Woodstock. Love Woodstock. Yeah, we love it. We know, we go to Salt or we go to Pure or that Century Tower or whatever, they're like, we love the downtown. And I had the guys for Roberto's and Prime 120 on here, and they were they're awesome.
They are amazing.
They are great guys with a good vision and want to help it grow as well.
And incredible investors here downtown. And so our downtown, you've got between 30 and 40 bars and restaurants walking distance from the center of town. It is one of the most walkable cities in North Georgia now.
Yeah.
And that is just the beginning. We've got 12, 13 trail segments under construction or in planning right now. We've got the largest single parks and trails investment in our city's history occurring right now.
And you mentioned that at Monday Morning Brews, and I want to tell you that is fabulous. That is great old school thinking about how to – yeah, I think you can do more things than once. One thing and one at a time, because you should be thinking about growth and all this, and the building and the retail and the residential and all the fun stuff that goes along with that, and the challenges and all this. But I think you also have to look back and go, what do people want? Like, what's the green on the on Elm or whatever it's called? And I think you look at those things, and they're more of a quality of life, not
Absolutely.
and this is coming from a custom builder.
Oh, you
don't just look at the build, but look at what around it makes that experience wonderful.
You don't get to build a city one-dimensionally. So I think honestly, I think it's a huge part of the problem that most city leaders get trapped in.
Yeah.
Is that they pick an agenda item and they chase it, and that becomes the identity of the city. What I love about Woodstock is, if I sit with any 10 people and I ask them to tell me about Woodstock, they'll end up using the same kinds of words. You hear the word vibrant a lot. You hear walkable, fun. You hear you hear the same kinds of words, but everybody will describe it differently. They'll tell you different aspects they like. And it's because cities come with character. They come with long-term development, different patterns, different neighborhoods, different corners, echoes, grids.
Right.
And I think what we call cities in America today, especially suburban and exurban cities, what we really mean more often than not is that one really cool thing that I like to go do in that one place before I get back in the car and I go to a different place. Yeah. In Woodstock, what I love about it is it really is taking on the character of a city. Yeah. It's a place that you can show up, and we all show up for different things.
Right.
It is a place that you see the 92 Accord and the Lamborghini parked next to each other, and nobody thinks anything of it. Like it's not a city that got plopped down by Disney World yesterday, all as one piece.
Right, and a master plan deal and all that.
It's a real fabric. And so the continued establishment of this grid street that we're building out, so that when you walk off of one street, you don't feel like you're out of town all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Like we're really building the neighborhood and corner feeling of a city.
I love it. I love hearing that from you, because one of the things I was going to ask you guys, and sometimes it's hard to put a metric on that, right?
Sure.
But I was hoping that is part of what the council and your vision is, to keep that, fight that one-dimensional thing, right? And it's hard because, the other thing is you're looking at budgets that need to grow as well, and what makes the most money. And okay, fair enough, that is a data point. But, the data point that says this is quality of life should be just as valued. It just doesn't pay as much. So that gets lost sometimes.
My cheesy tagline I use everywhere is, we like beer, art, and balanced budgets. So if you like those three things, you're going to like Woodstock. As an administration, my priorities have been, we've got three main priorities that we've been chasing now for 3 years, and we've seen some really great wins on all fronts. So the first was parks and trails. So last year in November, we went to the ballot with a parks referendum, a parks bond referendum. And we asked the voters, we want to invest $24 million, the largest single parks investment in Woodstock's history, to build trails and to build Little River Park, a 100-acre offering that is, there's no other park, there will be no other park like Little River Park in North
fabulous.
Georgia. Voters passed with an 87% majority. So first, thank you to everybody who voted. But second, I won't get...
That's a mandate. I
won't get a mandate like that ever again. That was a full-on mandate. The voters are looking for that kind of investment. So first priority was, Woodstock is what Woodstock is, largely because of outdoor recreational offering. That got us on the map. And we are doubling down on that quality of life, that sense of place. The second is commercial diversification. So we've built one of the most visited downtowns in the Southeast. It is the shopping and drinking and tourism destination for North Georgia. I always like to tease, we're a great place to live, work, and play. You just have to pick two. You can afford to live and play here, or you can afford to work here, but you're not going to do both. And so we have to talk affordable housing like the whole country is. And I'll talk about housing in a second.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to hit that at some point.
I'll be there. Don't worry. That's priority 3 coming. But what we miss is that's a two-sided coin. I have people who can afford to live and play here. And then I have people who can afford to work here. Those people who can afford to work here can't afford to live here. So we got to find the housing. But forget that for a second. I've got people who can live and play here. They can't find a job here. So I got to start attracting jobs to the people who actually live here. If I want to build a city, I want to tackle traffic and congestion.
That's the problem.
You can do that with 16-lane highways, or you can do it by building an actual destination that people don't have to travel out of to go live their life, right? So I'm so sick and tired of hearing people say, where do you live? And what they really mean is, where do you sleep?
Right.
We are building a place people live. And that means play, that means walk, that means parks, that means jobs. We are building a sense of place and life.
Now you're speaking my language, because I told you that, and I don't sometimes it sounds like it because I'll vocalize things. It sounds like I'm BSing or blowing smoke.
You do not strike me as the guy who's going to tell me you agree with me if you don't.
I don't. You're right. But when I said you're wise, super wise at 35 and have cool perspective on it, that is a cool perspective right there. Is how to put those things in place like that. It's. And tackle the challenging sides of that, for like you're about to talk about the affordable housing and things like that, and jobs that are good jobs there, and how do you do it? And I love that, man. And I'll tell you something, for all the problems and the things that we have these days, which are real and they're fine, and I say get in and fight them and all the things we all do and bitch about them and vent and whatever, fine. But I love that you said something earlier about how we went from country to city to suburban, and then everybody's doing. I like now that it's come back to these little country towns because so at 55, I'm a 87 Sprayberry grad, and Woodstock was a little country town.
Right.
We would come up here to go four-wheeling.
87, we would have had less than 4,000 people in the city.
Right, and so.
In 13 square miles.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It was a little country town, and Etowah was a hick school. We would play in football and we tease. We're like, the girls dip up there. At least you can get a dip from a girl, and it was just it was podunk. And what I think's fascinating is now it's come back. And at some point before that, my mom grew up there, and it was more of a vibrant town.
Sure.
People walked and went and got groceries and did things and lived. So it went away from that. Fair enough. Everybody went to Atlanta to work, and this was bedroom communities and that kind of thing. I love, and a lot of cities are doing it, and Woodstock does it well. Like Roswell and Alpharetta, everybody's getting back to those little, like you said, work, live, play. Those little cities all throughout, and I love that.
So let's talk about that first. I want to come back to priority 3 on the housing, but I want to talk about this first because this is important.
Yeah, for sure.
To me, what you're describing is a core part of the. I don't think I'll get overly political by saying we're wildly divided as a nation right now.
Yeah, for sure.
So
no
things
doubt.
feel broken. Yep. And you can tie that back to exactly what you're describing right now. So what we're describing when we talk about rebuilding downtowns and rebuilding actual senses of cities is that we are leaning into 5,000 years of urban development. Okay, this is 5,000 years of human development pattern. The idea that you live near where you work wasn't a good idea they had 5,000 years ago. It was the only
idea. That's right.
So you built your home. In the base of the home, you sold goods out of the front, and then you lived upstairs.
Yeah.
And then we built a lot of those little homes near each other, and all of a sudden you've got a commercial district on the base. You've got everybody living above, and then it became the sense of downtowns. And there's a reason that the cities and towns and villages of Europe have been there for 1,000 years.
Right.
Because it's a sustainable mechanism.
For sure.
We introduced the automobile 3 generations ago. In wide-scale fashion. Yeah. 4 or 5 generations of automobile, but 3 generations of wide-scale usage, right?
Sure.
Where now, all of a sudden, we unleashed economic opportunity in the idea that you don't need to work right under where you live.
That's right.
But here's the problem that this generated, is now, where were you born?
Yeah, here.
Okay, you're a unicorn, and you know that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
If my city went from 4,500 to 40,000 in 30 years, it means 90% of the people who live here weren't born here. Right?
That's right.
Statistically, in this country, statistically, odds are you were not born. You do not live where you were born.
Probably not even in the state.
It's exactly right. At exactly the same time, the statistics are even worse about whether or not you live in the city you work. Yeah. So you are less likely to live in the city you work than you are to be born in the city that you live. Yeah. So here becomes the problem. If you live in a city you weren't born in and your family's not in, you don't have roots in, and it starts to feel bad, what do? Yeah. You move. Yeah. If the city your job is in starts to feel bad, what do? Yeah. You find a new job. Right. And so what we have done is we've created a completely transient culture that treats cities like consumables. So as soon as they start to feel bad, unlike 3 generations ago and 5,000 years prior, where you would have said, I don't have a choice, I have to do something about this. Now you vote with your feet instead of your vote. That's right. And the problem, why that becomes a national problem, is the baseline, you cannot pretend to be shocked that when people have no sense of place, they lose a sense of identity.
Oh, yeah.
And if they don't have any sense of duty or responsibility to the place they live, how badly does that translate up the chain? And so you have an entire nation of people looking around right now, looking at massive problems. And rather than looking in the mirror, we are all looking around going, I wonder who's done this to me today.
That's right.
I have to get away from them.
Right.
As opposed to looking around and going, what can I do to help make this better today?
Clearly, listen, I'm going to tell you, that is brilliant. There is so much to unpack right there. It is absolutely, I'm listening to it. And usually I listen to things to people say, and there's usually some chinks in, because
I'm sure there are in this too. But
I would imagine there are. I would imagine some sociology professor could argue something about it, but just on a surface level, a 30,000-foot view like we're doing here, it's brilliant. And you said something to me that is fascinating. We started treating our cities like consumable goods, but they are not.
Right.
They are not.
The problem is,
and
they
then
have to play the infinite game. So if you look, think through all the cities that think about suburban cities, especially in Metro Atlanta, but in sprawling metropolitan areas. Right. If you look at cities, they're going to have a 10 to 15 year shelf life where they're a really awesome place to be.
Yep.
And then they start to feel expensive, things start to break down, and everybody moves 10 miles north because it's cheap and easy to do. And the only people they leave behind are the people who can't afford to do that.
Right.
And so you end up leaving devastation in your wake.
Yeah.
And it is a terrible development pattern. It doesn't work. It's unsustainable. You combine that with the fact that the suburban sprawl and the nature of what we've watched over the last 3 generations in America is also fiscally unsustainable.
That's right.
You cannot tax the houses enough to actually support the infrastructure we've built out.
That's right.
For the style of development we've done. We're returning back to urban downtowns, and you hear me say sense of place often because that to me is the core. It's less about it's not the amenities. It's when you look at somebody, they go, I love living in Woodstock. And why? And they have to try to bring this ethereal sense. And what they're really trying to tell you is, I identify with the place I am.
Yeah.
Like, this is part of who I am.
That's the psychology behind it, right?
And the more people can get bought into that, not only is that good for the place they're in, it's good for them. It is good for an individual. It's good for a family. It's good for children to grow up in a place where they look around. Exactly.
It
doesn't force. It incentivizes people. It incentivizes kids growing up in it. Yeah. When they start to see something break, rather than go, I can't wait to get out of here. They go, what do we do about this?
Right.
And that's the difference. And that's what we're returning back to right now in these towns.
So let me ask you something, and because I agree with all of that, and it's fascinating, and I love thinking about it, and it's a ton to unpack. So I'll be talking to myself for a while about this.
This is all I do.
Well, and that makes sense.
Other than pay my bills in the private sector.
Yeah, right. Well, obviously, being a builder that gets a degree in sociology, I'm fascinated by it, and it's interesting, and I think. And so one of the hopeful things I love about it is that there's always somebody that innovates or does something cool, and that's what's happening now with these moves to these, suburban and even rural areas, because there's a lot of, if you look at North Georgia, there's a lot of the breweries or the little towns, Blue Ridge and things like that are now revitalizing.
A sense of place.
Oh my God, it's a sense of place. I love that, and I love the psychology behind that because they can identify with it.
Right.
I think somehow, hopefully that ends up being almost an American identity as well, where we get that proudness back.
I think that's how you build a strong American identity for this next
from
generation.
A micro level.
You give them a sense of pride in where they live, and it translates into that.
That's interesting.
So we're losing that, and we wonder why. I think it starts here.
Yeah, no, you're right.
So if we can build here, if you can build that sense of identity, sense of pride, that sense of place, you build that sense of national character as well.
Well, and everybody has an appetite for it, right?
Exactly.
I mean, we all love living. Now, I live on the lake, but we work in Woodstock and walk everywhere and love it. Have talked about getting a golf cart, but I'm like, but I love to walk around.
Yes.
You know what I mean? We have a golf cart for our neighborhood at the lake, but I love to walk in Woodstock.
Yes.
And see people I
totally
know.
Agree. Isn't that amazing too? It's the 20th largest city in the state. And yet you wander down, and it's so funny because you have to contextualize that. There's 570 cities in the state.
I was going to say, that's pretty big.
It's the 20th largest city in the state. And you can wander down a sidewalk, and you're going to run into people you know.
Right.
It's the smallest big city in America
And that
today.
becomes,
I love that.
I do too, and that becomes part of that identity
Yes.
and everything.
You feel like you belong, right? So it's this sense of belonging, this sense of place, this sense of responsibility. Everybody walking that city looks right. You have what I love is you have no shortage of opinions. Everybody has an opinion about how things are going in it, and yet you don't have that sense of division.
Yeah.
Why is that? It's because nobody doubts we all want the same things for this place. We'll all talk about how we do it.
Of course.
And I love that. It makes being mayor of the city a lot of fun.
Yeah,
we don't spend time.
Sure.
We don't spend time arguing. We spend time talking.
Right.
How are we going to make this place better?
Sure.
And I adore it.
Yeah, I don't blame you. And which will sort of bring me to my next deal. And we sort of jumped ahead, and it's such an intellectually desirable thing for me. But let me get back to you real quick.
Sure.
The wife.
Yes.
Did she grow up here?
Yeah.
Tell me about her.
Yep. She grew up.
Y'all were sweethearts. So
So she grew up here. Similar story, but settled here younger than I did. But she jumped around a little bit. She was born in Louisiana on base. Her dad was in the Air Force.
Oh, nice.
Born on base in Louisiana.
Barksdale?
Down in Shreveport, which base is right outside of Shreveport.
Can't remember.
I can't either.
Yeah.
Don't tell my father-in-law. He'll tell me. No.
It might be Barksdale, but I can't remember exactly.
So born in Shreveport, she lived there. She lived in South Dakota. Her family, both sides. Both sides out of Tennessee. Her mom's side from Chattanooga area. Her dad's side from West Knoxville. Out in Maynardville. And so she grew up a little bit all over, but they settled down here in Woodstock when her dad went private sector. So we ended up meeting here.
Yep.
She was a fifth grade math teacher. We had our kids. She stayed home with the kids. She's now home with the kids, and then also is the chair of the board of directors for Woodstock Arts, and spends probably about 30 hours a week doing that now.
Right on.
Absolutely adores it, and she.
Right
I tell
there
everybody
at the gallery right there off Elm Street. And all that.
So they run that Visual Arts Center. So the Reeves House Visual Arts Center. They run the Kish House Pottery Center right next to that. They run the Elm Street Green and all the programming on that. And then they run the theater as well. That's over fantastic. At the corner. So they hold about 550 events a year. Which is more events than days in the year.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. And I can throw a rock from my office from the old booth house.
That's exactly right. Yeah. That's exactly right. Yeah. So they are an absolutely incredible asset. The coolest part of that organization, I don't know it's coolest. One of the really cool things about that organization, they're one of only 3 like it in the nation. So they're completely and totally nonprofit, charitably driven. The government doesn't subsidize the operating expenditure at all for them. At all. So what we do, the property they operate on is owned by the city, but outside of that, they are not subsidized. So they are completely and totally private sector driven, and yet they're disciplinary. So they operate in pottery and visual arts and music and theater and educational programming. And there's only 3 of those like that in the nation.
Without getting off on a tangent too much when you said that, because one of my friends, his wife, runs is up at the Booth Museum and all that. So she's been with the Center for Puppetry Arts and all that. So just through osmosis picking up something. I mean, they get lots of funding, and I have no problem with that. I think funding the arts is a big deal, and
we'll talk about that because I've actually come a long way on that.
Well, and the reason I do is because I think again, being a historian, and I think just life is more than just 2 + 2 is 4, and this is how things should be. I think art and those things that are a little more what used to be figured as liberal should be woven into our society.
Art is an expression of society. We have never, ever in human history had a thriving civilization that didn't also have a thriving arts community.
Right.
Elizabeth's golden age had Shakespeare, the de Medicis, you had Da Vinci. If you look through all of human history, there was always an arts component tied to thriving civilization.
Persian dynasty, the Roman, the Greek, just
when
wonderful.
You remove a thriving arts component, you lose that thriving civilization base. So to me, I'm not an artist. I married the artist. I had to learn my appreciation for the arts, and I am wholly bullish on the presence of the arts in our city. I think it's a huge component of what makes it's a huge competitive advantage for Woodstock. The fact that we have that unique multicultural arts center in our city is a huge part of our secret
I think
sauce.
so too, and I dig that it's not funded. And what I wonder about is and I know people there because there's always strings attached to things you have to, once you get grants and government money. But so they're probably better off as long as they are funded and they can do things, they can do what they want to do. And so, but I don't have a problem either way.
Right.
But how does that shake out? I mean, is it just through events, or do they have benefactors, or do they have things like that?
Little bit of everything.
A little everything,
So,
yeah.
They're definitely grant chasers. They have private donors. They use corporate sponsors for different programming.
Fantastic.
My business is the presenting sponsor for the Lantern Series, the concert series that they do out on the green.
Yep.
And so it just depends on what they're operating on, but they have to go build a business plan. They have a board that builds that out.
It's a business, and then they get to do exactly what they want.
That's exactly right. So what a cool competitive edge for a city
Very
like
much
ours.
so.
And what an incredible offering for a community when you, again, 500 something events in a year.
That's incredible.
It's amazing.
Had no idea.
Isn't that awesome?
Yeah, it's awesome because, and you know how it is running a bit. I can't running a business. I can't imagine having that many events. I mean, we struggle to put the events on that we have weekly. You know what I mean? It's like
they have an incredible team who really is. They are obviously arts passionate, but they are also passionate about the community.
Right on.
And if they weren't, they wouldn't be delivering like
For
that.
sure.
So they do a great job.
Well, cool. Well, I appreciate that. So the wife does that.
Yep.
Kids sports or anything?
Oliver is he's now in the elite tier of the academy teams for Cherokee Impact or for Georgia Impact Soccer now.
Nice.
So, yep. It's great because it means we get to drive an hour and a half each way every weekend for whatever travel game we're traveling
Early too.
He's killing it. He's the
fun.
starting goalkeeper, and he's just spectacular. And he's super passionate about it.
Right on.
Yeah, proud of my kid.
I
He's
bet.
doing a great job.
I bet. Glad to hear it. I think just like arts are important, I think sports are equally as important.
Teaches character, teaches you how to work with a team, teaches you how to execute on a plan. A lot of great lessons.
Yep. My son was, of course, I played and grew up and then did the Army. My son is, he was a football and wrestler, and in college he's a ranger now in the
Outstanding.
Army.
Well, thank you. Thank him for his service too.
Thank you. And same thing with my daughter. She's an RN at Northside Atlanta,
and for her service.
yeah, for sure. And
we said teachers and police officers and firefighters earlier. We didn't say nurses, but that's another job that goodness gracious.
It really is. It was definitely it's an, I guess you would say, underserved industry right now.
Yes.
But I will say they are catching up on the pay scale and benefits and things, and it's wonderful to see. Have to.
So the of the top 4 employers in Georgia with open roles today, if you count it by open roles and rank them that way, 3 of the top 4 are healthcare hospital networks looking for nurses.
Yeah, makes sense.
So I think if I remember the numbers right, these are probably 8-9 month old numbers now, but I think Wellstar had 3,500 open roles for nurses. Northside had 2,000 open roles for nurses. There is not a public or private sector entity anywhere near the hospital networks in this state for what they need, because we just can't get enough people in.
For sure, which is phenomenal to me. And I sort of used to get it until things have balanced. Now they pay well.
Right.
The benefits are incredible.
Right.
The work conditions are very professional, I mean, they're still tough. I mean, when you're dealing with, she's a labor and delivery, and that is a stunningly, how would you say, almost bipolar. I mean,
you're dealing in life and death and people at their most vulnerable and their happiest, and all of it all
and their saddest. Yes. I mean, yes, exactly right. I've seen that girl.
Oh, God bless her.
Yeah, deliver. She has literally had to deliver babies, and you're so proud. And I've seen her come in and just fall on the floor and cry.
I believe it,
because people's babies died and they had to deliver and give them that, and it's incredible. But I will say that now they're finally taking care of them, and I'm like, I don't know why so many young folks aren't going to do those things. I mean, and again, without getting overly political, do what you want, it's America, but to get these degrees that are more socially driven, it's like, why wouldn't you do these things that, what college was, what it was founded for. It was to help you get a good job.
Sure.
And there are good jobs out there. And it's funny because they're underserved. It's like, how is that even possible now? It's $100,000 job right out of college.
It's, well, and look, and we're going to end up down a real deep rabbit hole here, but this problem started with the trades, right? I mean, we have been battling that for 15, 20 years now.
I can attest as a builder.
Yep. You've got, if you look at the nuclear power plants in this country, the average age is in the high 50s now.
Yep.
That is a national security issue.
Right.
That's not an employment issue. That is a national security issue.
That's the truth.
And so we've been facing that in the trades. We're watching that extend into jobs like nursing and teaching and police officers and firefighters that are now becoming trade-like in that.
That's true.
And so we're watching
blue collar.
Comically, these are not jobs we used to consider blue collar.
I know.
We've redefined what blue and white collar are.
And so really have.
It is a massive problem. These are great jobs that pay well, that give solid opportunity and planning and long-term sustainability. And
so what's your theory on that?
That it's a problem we have to get solved.
I agree. What's the causal?
What's the cost? I think I don't know that there's a single cause to that. I think in the trades, it was largely every high school counselor in the 90s saying, you don't want to hold a wrench.
Of course.
We're largely making that better now, but you still have a generation of parents who don't want to see their kids go hold a wrench.
Yeah.
And so we've got to fix that.
Right.
For police officers, firefighters, nurses, I think right now you're watching people come off of the COVID era, watching nurses get spit on. Why would you possibly want to go do that job? And so it's going to take a little time for people to start to realize, that doesn't have to be what that job is.
Right.
And also they pay well and they treat you well.
They do.
So that will come back around. But
I think you're right. And talking about the blue collar jobs and the trades and things. And
we built a perception around it. And so that's something I think, though, Cherokee County is doing a spectacular job. Are you familiar with Be Pro, Be Proud?
No.
Okay, so Cherokee County, the Office of Economic Development here in Cherokee County picked up the statewide license for a program that started in Arkansas called Be Pro, Be Proud. And it is they actually have a semi-truck that they take around the state now, and they go sit with high school students, and they bring them in. And it is, when I describe this, I'll do a bad job describing, so you have to go look at this.
Sure.
Look it up.
Yep.
They have next-gen experience. You get on, you go through virtual reality, you can experience what it's like to drive trucks, you can go practice robotics, do all of these trades that we're trying to get people into. Go expose high school students to, was that pretty cool? Wasn't that a cool experience driving that truck? Wasn't it cool operating that machinery? Also, that's a six-figure job. And let these high school students go, whoa, wait, what?
Right.
And so starting to finally get high school students exposed to this stuff, not just in a counselor's office who goes, well, maybe you're not going to make it into Yale, but instead to be able to stand there and go, oh, actually, I want to do that job. Right. That looks incredible.
Right.
And so trying to not just normalize, but really actually bring the hype that's deserved around these jobs.
Yeah, agreed.
And so Cherokee County led the way on this. Missy Martin in her office here in the county went and got that license early. Now the state chamber, the Georgia Chamber of Commerce is behind it, and you've got the state has gotten behind this program.
I love it.
It's just such a cool promotion.
Be proud.
Be pro, be proud.
So I love that, and I've always said that, being a builder, and with kids growing up, and I coached and was very involved in them, and I would always tell them that, consider these jobs.
Yes.
And I would just flat tell these kids that my electrician, my plumber, and my HVAC man all make over $100,000 a year. You are going to come out of college making $30,000 a year in a cubicle that you hate if you do not choose correctly.
With college debt.
With college debt, and it is so stunningly wrongheaded,
right,
that I cannot believe we have promoted it for decades now.
That was something we, back when I was in the State House, we did too. I think it was back in 2014, we passed the Hope Grant. So we've had the Hope Scholarship for decades now, but the Hope Grant pays for technical college certificates for 17 needed professions here.
No kidding.
I think it's 17, double check me on the number. But
I
for
didn't
the
even
needed
know
professions like truck driving, like welding,
yes.
So if you want to go get those things, you don't even have to pay for the certificate. The state will cover you to go through your training.
No debt, come out with a job.
Come out with certification, get started. You're making better money than you would have made even if you'd gone through 4 years.
It's incredible.
And so there's no reason not to go do these things now.
Yeah.
It is solely a perception game, and it is a recognition that we have to promote these pathways to students.
It's fascinating to me. So you were saying you weren't sure about the causal. I think
there are 85 causes, but I'm curious
that's a fair point. I think you're right. I think there's always a lot of variables in those things, but I do think it's from go to college no matter what. A degree is
Yes.
better than, you know, the lowest degree trumps everything else out there. And it's like not true.
Right.
And it's never been true, but that was what kids were, that
Agreed.
was the only singular focus.
Well, it was easier and truer when college was so out of reach for the majority of students. And so when if you look at
supply and demand, right?
That's exactly right. And that is a part of, it's simultaneously like the biggest success and the biggest failure point of higher ed is that we have brought in so many more students. But the bigger problem is that we have dramatically increased the offering, and yet we have also simultaneously dramatically increased the cost.
Right.
And so although supply has dramatically expanded, demand also expanded, but pricing skyrocketed.
Oh,
and so we didn't actually solve the underlying economic problem. We only exasperated it.
Yeah, that's true. Well, you know, it's funny, and you're right. This is a rabbit hole. I mean,
I warned you.
But yeah, it's true. But I always found it fascinating that colleges, and you know, something I like with our alma mater is that they sort of gobbled up Southern Tech.
Yes. Yep.
And now they're an engineering school as well as liberal arts.
Our alma mater is a great example.
It really is.
Of where you can get a genuinely cost-effective degree.
Yes.
And so it's the difference between coming out with 6 figures of debt to try to go get a sub 6-figure job.
Yeah.
Versus coming out. I started without the Hope Scholarship because it turns out when you're a lazy math student in high school, that doesn't do you any favors.
Right.
And I had to be part of that 5% that earned my Hope Scholarship back.
Right.
But I managed to get out of school without debt, and it was largely because I was at Kennesaw. I could go work, and it's what when I talk about I finished Kennesaw early. It sounds impressive and it's a fun talking point, but the reality is I learned anything over 12 credit hours at the time, the credit hours were free.
Well, free.
Well, wait a minute. How big a override can I get from the dean to take as many hours as I can?
I love that practicality.
And so, it's free. It's free money. So I'm going to go take as many classes as I can. I'm here.
Buckle down, knock it out, save money.
It's all cheaper. I'm going to get out without debt, and
I get out sooner.
And it worked.
Yeah,
and so
that's awesome.
but that was only plausible and possible because I was at a school like Kennesaw.
Yeah, for sure.
So I don't know. Higher ed is what you make it. Figure out how to drive an outcome out of it. And
Agreed.
if you're not going for a purpose and you don't know what you want to do, there are some incredible professions out there that our nation genuinely needs people to get excited about.
And the military, if you don't know what you want to do, join the military. Goodness.
Absolutely.
I've talked to Captain Hands a couple of times, with the CID there. And, I think he said they have 50 positions that are open right now in Cherokee County. It's incredible, and they pay well.
Absolutely,
they got good benefits, a good career path.
When I came into the city, we had 57 sworn officers at the time in the city, and we had 16 vacancies. Yeah, because you're adding fewer police officers to the total pool in Georgia than you're losing on a given year right now, and so it is a zero-sum game. We're all competing for the same officers.
Right, for sure.
We had 16 vacancies. In my first year, we raised starting police pay by 26% because we had to get those vacancies filled.
Yeah.
And so now we're nearly full staffed. I say nearly. I think we are at full staff, but you always have one or two attrition.
Attrition.
We're fully staffed in our police department for the first time in well over a decade.
No kidding.
And that is it. But it's a shame that that's only because we're all competing for the same office. The fact that we're fully staffed means somebody else isn't. And that can't be the long-term strategy for policing.
Well, it's not, right? Like you said about the nuclear industry.
Right. It's a national security issue.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, in build, I joke a lot of times, I love seeing young guys in it because at 55, I'm like, I'm the young guy in this business.
Who am I handing this off to?
That's a problem.
Exactly. Who am I handing the industry off to?
It's a problem.
Yes.
And it's a huge problem, and again, I think this is a national security deal. If you don't have police officers,
I wholeheartedly agree.
You are in trouble.
Look, but we've talked all about the secret sauce of Woodstock, and what we haven't talked about is this is one of the safest cities in the city. Right. And so that is a core of what makes Woodstock Woodstock. And I think a large part of that is, and I've got to praise our incredible police department. We've got an incredible chief. And it's because we engage in what I genuinely believe is community policing. Those officers are out, they're walking around, they're getting to know people. Yep. They are amongst the most accessible crew of police officers I've ever encountered.
I love that, and I love the fact that they will talk to you, just normally talk to you.
They're great, solid human beings who are out interacting in the community and trying to make the place better and safer, not just out enforcing.
And that's a big distinction.
I agree.
Because when you get jerky cops,
Yes.
it is a PR nightmare. And I think we're seeing, I think we're seeing some kickback from this defund the police deal.
Yeah.
But that comes from a stressed, and look, my dad's a retired Marietta police officer. My mom worked for Cobb County Sheriff's Office for years and then switched to Lockheed. So I
Policing family.
Very
Yes,
much
sir.
so, and military and all that. So I get it. And it's one of those deals to where when you stress them, like in any job, you sort of take out that community policing, and then they become a little bit jerky because they're stressed, and all they're having to do is react when your numbers are low and all this.
And again, we're having the fun in the circle of all these problems are interrelated. This is the same problem you run into with nurses, the same problem you run into with teachers.
100% accurate.
You make a teacher spend 3/4 of their time doing paperwork when what they signed up for was to teach kids.
It's so
Go
true.
figure, right?
Yeah, right.
You take a police officer who wanted to go be part of their community and make it better,
right?
And you require them to spend 3/4 of their time writing tickets, and then you're yelling at them the whole time.
Yeah,
Go figure,
right.
they hate their job.
So,
so how do
no
we get
wonder
people,
he's pissy.
Yeah, get people back to the core of what we're all here to do, which is to build a better sense of place, a better sense of identity, a better place to be.
Well,
okay,
good.
I have to talk to you about housing before we run out of time.
Yes,
here.
please.
I promised you.
Yeah,
All right.
please.
Okay, so I told you 3 priorities. So we had parks and trails.
Yep.
Commercial diversification, more jobs,
of course,
and housing. So, for me, you hear people talk about affordable housing, and that is a contextual question. What does that mean? Nobody knows, right? So set that aside for a second. Let's talk about the root of this problem. As a historian, we built the largest single wealth generating mechanism in human history in the form of American home ownership. And we pretend like it was raw Adam Smith capitalism and it was accidental and it just happened. That's not true. No. We came back from World War II, and at that point, we did not have a majority of homeowners in this country. This if you look at Europe, the majority of people do not own their home.
Oh, no.
Look at California, majority of people don't own their home.
Well, a lot of countries don't allow you to own the land.
This is not that's exactly right. This is not a natural thing that happens.
Yeah,
we came back from the war and we looked around and said, we have got to figure out a way to build a middle class in this country. We look at Teddy Roosevelt and the Carnegies. You look at the middle class is not something that has universally existed in this country.
No.
This is a new advent. We brought this about. So we came back and we said 3 levels of government. Federal, state, and local. Largest single public-private partnership in human history. Federally subsidized mortgage interest rates, state tax laws to incentivize ownership, local zoning laws to incentivize ownership inventory. And that we set up all these public structures, and then the private sector, the economic engine of America, unleashed to build more homes than we could possibly have imagined or dreamed.
For sure.
And so everyone goes out, they buy their home, we get the GI Bill out, you get the average American into a home, and we have to ask the question why, right? It's not because we have some affinity for postage stamp lots in this country. It's because we recognize that you do not build wealth from salary. You build wealth from equity.
That's right.
And the average American won't start a business, so we have to get them into an appreciating asset. Bitcoin is not it. so we get them into a home because everybody has to live somewhere. If I can get you into a home that you own, you make wealth off of every mortgage payment you make. And that nest egg becomes a larger nest egg. And so what we've done now, like we've talked about, you now have the first generation of Americans who are objectively poorer than their parents and are objectively making more money than their parents
Which is stunning.
So these millennials come out of school in the heart of the Great Recession. They look around, their parents are upside down on their houses, and their parents go, don't buy yet. We don't know what housing is anymore. The whole thing's broken because what happened, you had 3 generations. This worked over and over and over again. And then the bankers lied. The paper didn't match the assets.
That's true.
The whole industry fell apart. Half the developers in the country went under. The other half couldn't get loans to
You're talking about the recession, 08, 09?
Yeah, 08. Sorry, yes. So 2008 happens, bankers lie, assets don't match the books. The whole thing falls out from under us. And these kids come out of school, their parents go, dear God, don't buy right now. Like nobody can buy any, bank's not going to give you any money anyway, but even if they could, you don't know where you want to live. Move into my basement. Move into an apartment. 15 years later, they are now objectively poorer than their parents. Their parents are looking at them going, man, you should have saved like I did. And they are full of crap. They didn't save any better than their kids did. What they did do is they bought a house right out of college. And that house turned into a nest egg.
Well, it was a saving mechanism.
They
the
then
house
bought a larger,
exactly
right. That nest egg from that first small starter house turned into a nest egg they used to buy their bigger house for their family. And then their kids moved out and they downsized, took all that equity out and they retired. And that worked for 3 generations in a row. Now we're 15 years later. These kids are getting wise. They want in, but we are looking at the largest inventory shortage compared to demand that we've ever seen. In Metro Atlanta alone, just the core 5 counties, we have a 350,000 housing unit deficit.
Right.
We added 15,000 units last year, and that includes 10,000 apartment units in Atlanta proper. Apartment unit doesn't do anything for this conversation, right? You're not driving equity. You're not driving ownership.
Not for them.
You're driving wealth, but it's not for the family in it.
That's right.
And so we are now at a point where the problem, the deficit between demand and supply is so wide that it's nearly insurmountable.
Yeah.
I am preaching, as a conservative, it's really easy to say things like density's bad. No, it isn't. Density's not a bad word. The ownership-rentership ratio is the only ratio we should be watching.
Yeah.
So Woodstock sits at 65% ownership, which is the national average for the last 3 generations.
Yep.
The city to the north of me is majority renter. The city to the south of me is majority renter. That is the direction every city in this country will go.
Holly Springs and
talk about Canton and Marietta.
Marietta.
I think Canton's just over majority, or
Okay.
just under majority. Renter.
Okay.
And so if we want to build a financially stable city, you build financially stable people. We built wealth for 3 generations. We built the largest middle class in human history in American homes.
Agreed.
And the most important part, and why I think this would be most interesting to you, other than the fact that you're a builder and developer, and obviously it's front of mind.
Yeah.
It is no coincidence that Pax Americana and American home ownership overlapped. We call it the American dream for a reason.
Yeah.
You build political stability when the American middle class feels stable, when they feel confident that they'll be fine tomorrow and that their kids will be better off than them.
Absolutely.
The arguments we have are the Reagan-Tip O'Neill arguments, not arguing over our golf swing.
Right.
Not arguing over sizes of rallies. We argue about the real issues. And so the problem is when you shift out of that, then you get a generation that wonders what tomorrow looks like.
That's right.
And that builds political instability. And why that matters is that we had 75 years of geopolitical stability in this world that were unmatched for centuries before. And we pretend like it's because we were the only superpower. That's not true.
Michael,
a majority of that 75 years, we were one of 2 superpowers.
Listen, I don't want to break your stride, but I'm gonna go back to what I said before, which you have a lot of wisdom. So my first when I first started voting was Reagan and Tip O'Neill. I was going through that as a young man. I mean, I was just, in the late 80s when I started doing it. And you're absolutely right.
Clinton and Gingrich were arguing about how to balance the budget. Now we're not even, neither side's talking about balancing the budget. They're not interested.
No.
And so
phenomenal.
We are at a point now where if you wonder why Eastern Europe feels like it's on fire, if you wonder why the Middle East feels like it's on fire, if you wonder why Taiwan's door is getting knocked on, look around and recognize that no other nation in the world believes right now that we're going to rally around anything at all.
That's right.
And that comes back to a lack of stability in the middle class. If you want geopolitical stability globally, it takes American leadership. You cannot have American leadership without a united American people.
It's true.
You won't have that unless we're all convinced tomorrow's better than today.
It's true.
That doesn't come without a middle class.
That's true.
That comes through American housing. So all American policy is American housing policy.
So
period.
You're trying to, as a politician here in Woodstock, which by the way, of course.
Add owned supply.
Supply.
Build more units that will build wealth for the families in them. I care less about how many walls it shares or ceilings or floors. I care more about who that unit builds wealth.
I like that. And I'll tell you, as a custom builder and a large project renovator and large custom homes and things, I do not think density is a bad word as long as it's coupled with ownership.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree. Yeah. You want to talk to me about an apartment complex, and I'm not interested. Now, look, you bring me the right project, I will always leave the qualifier.
Sure.
We'll be open to whatever.
Of course.
That's
not a bad deal. It's a solution.
That is not a policy priority for me.
I agree.
Build the same building and sell the units.
Oh, I love that.
Build me a neighborhood of single-family units that are all rented. I'm not interested.
But
Build me a neighborhood of single-family units that are for sale. I'm all in.
Agreed. And isn't it funny?
Right project, right place. But in general, that's the way I try to think about this because we have to drive ownership because we're not talking about Woodstock stability. You're talking about national stability. You were talking about global geopolitical stability based on the American
micro
home.
of the macro, right?
Exactly.
So I love that. And what's phenomenal to me is apartments are solutions for certain things.
Absolutely.
And like you said, I mean, you can't overlook that. That's
35% of our inventory should be rented inventory.
Fair enough. Agreed with that.
And not more.
That's what's incredible to me. And not more.
Yes.
And how do people not? And by the way, don't that help the taxes and everything when people have ownership? Right. And then it gets into that metric that it's hard to put a metric on. The identity.
It builds a sense of place.
Yes.
If I own where I live.
You
and
keep messing around, I'm going to vote for you for president.
Hard pass. If I own where I live and I walk to work and I can walk to the grocery store and I can hang out and drink and eat and play and I can let my kid run 25 feet ahead of me.
Wonderful.
I'm home.
Yeah.
And when I'm home, I have an interest of protecting home. I want to do what's right for this place. I want to lean into it. I'm happy to do for my neighbor. The only time that breaks is when where I live is different than where I sleep, than different where I work.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think that's I think people do not drill down, and that's one of the things I really want you to come to the mastermind. It's very psychological.
Yeah.
I think people don't get granular on these things and think about it. I think a lot of people get so singularly focused on, man, I just want to build there, make money, and do this.
Yep.
Or whatever the case is.
Yep.
They're so singular. But I love when you drill down and you understand the psychology of all these things. And by the way, when you do that, the truth of it is it's actually better all the way around for everything.
It's the difference between going to a doctor who treats symptoms and a doctor who treats the underlying cause.
So true.
So we can keep treating the symptoms here, or we can go after the underlying cause.
Yeah, it's so true. And so here's the $64,000 question. How do you get affordability? Because I will tell you, as a brokerage owner and a builder, the only places that I'm building now are they're not affordable. They're for folks that are doing quite well,
right.
And it's not because I'm an elitist or doing these things. I would be happy building. I cannot build.
Can I tell you? I
housing.
believe what you're doing is actually a service toward affordability, and here's how.
Tell me that.
By building more, particularly in Greenfield, by building more high-end homes in new developments, you are preserving the 1970s and 1980s houses that are being raised to build McMansions that are currently affordable options for people and are being pulled off the market because right now there's not enough existing high-end inventory for people. So this is a general contextual picture. We have to see all the pieces on the board.
For sure.
The other part of this, the direct answer, how do you build affordability? I say two answers: supply and scale.
Okay.
So we have to add supply. Yep. I do not believe government is the entity by which we should price fix. We should be adding supply, and that will drive pricing down.
Well, price fixing will cause scarcity, so that's going to mess that up.
It's bad in all things. We've watched it 100 times in history. It doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
So the way you drive it is not governmental price fixing. Yep. You add supply, and in a place like Woodstock, I am not going to give a young family a 2-acre lot with a white picket fence affordably. Right. But I can get them in a condo affordably. I can get them in a townhome affordably.
Density.
And that is the key.
Yeah.
And if you want the 2-acre lot with a white picket fence, there are market options for that.
Sure.
But when they bought that in Woodstock wasn't Woodstock.
Right.
So it's all about what you want to buy, right? If you want to be in a great urban exurban downtown where you can walk around and you can play and you get all of those things.
Condos,
you're going to give up square footage in order to achieve that.
Right.
If you want the square footage and the large lot, you can have that, but you're not going to walk across the street to a really cool brewery. That's
right.
The brewery doesn't want to build across the street from you.
You're going to be out a little
bit. So it is, as in all things in life, it is give and take. But what we have to recognize is in a city like Woodstock, 13 square miles, one of the residentially densest cities in the state now, we're walkable. We've got all these things.
For sure.
I'm not building 2-acre lots anymore. That can't be the target. It's not the goal.
No way.
So instead, we're going to build affordable owned units. Yep. That's the variable we're chasing.
I like that. And that seems to be the and I know from being involved, seeing that, what's going on is I love the density and I love the retail and residential.
Yes, that mixed use component builds again a whole new character. It continues to drive sustainability.
Right. But is it affordability there? I guess let's get down on that.
Again, without supply, no. When there are only 40 of those units near it, you're not going to have affordability because only 40 families get to pick it.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
But how do we continue to offer that inventory?
How do we get that
scale,
supply?
We keep building.
Just keep building.
So I hate to say it that way because you'll terrify the people who feel like we're overdeveloped. So it doesn't mean you say yes to everything, but it does mean that the right products that are offering that kind of supply, that's what we're looking at.
That's what we have to do.
So I have to keep reminding people, I'm not building the best thoroughfare in Georgia.
That's right.
Do not expect to drive 55 through the heart of downtown. That's not the hope. I'm building the best city in Georgia.
Right.
So yes, we are making the largest infrastructure investment in our city's history right now. We have by both quantity of dollars and quantity of projects, more road projects, sidewalk project, more infrastructure projects going on right now than we've ever had before.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I know there's a lot of orange cones. You're all welcome. It's tomorrow's Woodstock we're building today.
For sure.
That's how we do this sustainably.
And I think all that's wonderful. And I think actually how it's planned and sort of.
That's it, is executing a plan.
I think,
so making sure that we stick to the plan, that we're building this inventory where it's set out to be. That's how we do this in a way that's responsible. And that's the most important component of all this. You described a Woodstock before.
Yeah.
That what I love about Woodstock today, unlike so many of these North Atlanta cities that have gone through redevelopments, right? We were 4,500 people, we're 40,000 people. It still feels like Woodstock.
That does.
It's still Woodstock. You walk down Main Street, there's still that character. It's still
really
us.
Yeah.
If you look around, it looks completely different than it did,
right.
but it's still Woodstock.
Well, it still has a lot of the old buildings and character and the caboose, you know,
we
and
weren't dropped down in the middle of nothing by Disney, right?
That's right.
It is not some master planned, single developed. This is a hodgepodge of development over eras and generations.
Right.
It is a fabric of community, and that works.
Well, I like it. I think it is the winning strategy.
Yes.
I like your philosophy that backs it with the identity. It's not a one single metric deal, you know, or one variable that we're locked into. You know, you have to look at all those other things. And right now, you know, everything's going well and it seems really good. So good job to everybody involved.
We've got an incredible team, both on the staff side and the council, and some incredible predecessors who came before who got this all underway. And it's just, it's been incredible.
What's his, Donnie? Yes,
my predecessor. He served for mayor 16 years. He was on council before that. He did a spectacular job for us.
So I've had his daughter on here as well, and I'm familiar with her. So and him, and great. That's a great deal too. Well, and like you said, it leads up to now. You guys are doing it. So let me ask you, what's the challenge right now for Woodstock? What are the challenges? And give me the really good answer. What frustrates you?
Exactly what we've talked about. And that's that getting that ownership inventory built out is tremendously challenging because everybody wants to come in and build rental right now. So when we talk about a country in which 5 major institutional buyers are buying up single family homes all over the country, you talk about...
Have you guys been approached by some of those
They
folks?
don't approach us as a city, but they've bought a lot of homes. Right?
Yeah, right.
So fortunately, we're still under region average, but most of our peer cities aren't.
Right.
And it's that... Those are challenging dynamics. Right now, the market forces, because we seem to have forgotten this was a massive public-private partnership and that it should be a governmental endeavor.
Oh, yeah.
Along the private sectors who make this happen.
Oh, yeah.
The public sector every single elected official you talk to, you should be asking about this question. If they are not telling you the most important issue facing America today is American housing, they don't understand American housing.
Yeah, of course.
American,
it's the driver for everything.
All American public policy is American housing policy. Period.
Yeah, right.
This catapults into every other issue we face.
For sure.
So that's frustrating. I wish we could. Condos are really hard to finance right now because the market it's a new market.
Some of my bankers and they are very bearish on.
It's a new market.
I have been hit with requirements that are out of reach on some lending.
Yep.
And it's stunning at 55. It's a little bit of a hit to an ego for somebody to tell me no.
It's like, amazing, right?
I've never defaulted, and you're telling me no. And it's like,
finance markets in general are a little bizarre today.
They are very,
and will continue to be for a little while. But
I think so too.
So that's frustrating. Outside of that, I mean, honestly, it's the city is a tremendously fun place to get to serve.
Yeah,
we have. You always have naysayers, and everybody has the right to be one.
Of course.
Dramatic majority of the people who live in this city are not naysayers, even when they have divergent opinion.
Sure.
We have a really constructive population who is looking to figure out, how do I lean in and make this better?
Yeah.
That's rare for this country right now, if I'm honest.
Yeah, true.
And that's fun to get to serve with.
Yeah.
Because almost everybody you talk to, you know that even if we're not on the same side of an
constructive
issue,
is the operative word, right?
Exactly.
Because everybody wants to bitch and vent and fuss about this, which you and I do. Everybody does. That's
absolutely.
I mean, it's
I'm
a
the
human
king of that.
for sure. Well, look, that's okay, and I think it's good to actually do it. My wife and I drink coffee in the morning, and we fuss and look at news, and then we're done with it for the day, and then it's constructive from there on out.
Absolutely right.
So I think that's a good way to be, but But do you? So here's a question for you. Now,
Yeah.
be careful.
Okay.
Don't get in trouble with this. But are some of the old timers unhappy?
No, actually, you know what's funny? And now I say no, and that sounds like I just answered for every one of them.
Right.
I'm sure there are exceptions everywhere.
Of course.
What I find is almost always when I find a really strong what I would argue,
Growth.
anti-Woodstock future, right?
Yeah.
Because here's the reality. However you want to talk about growth doesn't have to mean more people. Growth doesn't have to grow. You're growing or dying. Growth can just mean a lot of different things.
It's a dynamic word.
I had somebody ask me when I said I was going to run for mayor, how are you going to freeze this thing? I said the only thing that happens when you freeze something is it dies. Put your dog in the freezer. You're going to learn a lot about frozen, right? So we don't get that option.
That's right.
It will change. The question is, does the change work for the people who live here or not?
Yeah.
And that's the goal, is how do we build tomorrow's Woodstock in a way that I want my kids to want to inherit this city. That's the only thing that matters.
Yeah.
The only metric. When we talk about how do you define the metric, the question
Right.
is, when we hit this next generation hits 18, are they doing what the American pattern is, which is say, I can't wait to get the hell out of here.
Right.
Or are they going, I love this place.
I don't want to go.
Whether I go to school someplace else or not, I'm coming back here.
Right on.
And that's the only, in a
love
decade in which a majority of South Georgia cities lost population, we are in a situation where I love talking about Woodstock, because when we talk about our problems, we have to remember that we have the problems that come with a place that people are dying to get into.
That's right.
That is a great position.
They're called good problems.
I will take it all day long. So yes, when we're dealing with problems like traffic and parking, which we're tackling, but those are problems that only come in a place that people want to be.
Right.
Yes, I want those problems.
Right.
Please give me more. Every one of those
Well,
towns.
that means it's growing in the right way.
75% of cities in America would beg to have the problems we deal with on a daily basis.
By the way, I like the traffic rounds.
I do too. So you asked the question about the old timers. Honestly, what I find is most people who are from Woodstock love what they've seen.
Okay.
It's the guy who moved here 3 years ago from California. Has a lot of opinions.
Okay.
about how this isn't what he signed up
Fair
for.
enough.
And I go, if you'd read the master plan,
Yeah.
it's exactly what you signed up for.
Due diligence.
So, not to say you can't be new here and have you are part of the fabric. You should be driving the future. But
So they moved because of it was that way, but it was been growing the whole way. You just got a snapshot.
Show up and they're
thought it would be that
surprised.
way.
Exactly. And so I get it. But it's counterintuitive. You'd think that the people who'd been here when it was 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people would be shocked and appalled.
Right.
Most of them are super excited. And you got to remember, they're the ones who were electing the people who helped make this happen, right?
That's absolutely true.
It's the people who are showing up right now going, well, I wanted exactly what it is today. And I appreciate that. And you have it.
Yeah.
But change is the only constant. Now we have to make sure that,
truth.
like we say, Woodstock today feels like Woodstock.
Right on.
Does Woodstock's tomorrow feel like Woodstock? That's the only metric.
I like that. So tell me something. You were unopposed, right?
I was.
Did I read that right?
Yes, sir.
So why is that?
I had an opponent.
Okay.
And he and I got beer regularly,
Oh.
and is just a super good guy.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to say it without sounding like I'm cocky. As I say it, I don't mean it this way. Other
Yeah,
than,
yeah. No, spit it out.
He decided I'd be the better candidate and decided to support me instead.
No
so
kidding.
I'm very grateful to him for that.
That's awesome.
It's a
Well, I can see that. I mean, you really
well,
got
I'm
a
grateful
special
for that.
kind of
I'm
deal.
very grateful for that.
Well, it's a sweet spot, right? Listen, you might not have that in a year or 2 years or 5. You may have it all your
absolutely.
life. I mean, I think we all line up at some point and we hit a sweet spot. And it's like, I'm just clicking on all cylinders here.
I hope I'm offering more value than I'm not.
Yeah.
What I keep telling people,
I think so.
I will get some wrong. The goal is to get more right than wrong.
Of course.
We do that, we move the thing forward.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
I don't see anything real big wrong right now. You never know what lies ahead.
Never know.
Seriously,
Nope.
I mean, because right now I think you're in a sweet spot, and I think the city's moving the right direction.
It's a city of momentum, and that was the goal, was coming in. And I've got my last of my term State of the City in January, and I'm starting finally now to start putting together what's that going to look like. And a big part of that's
Are you gonna run again?
I'll run again next year.
Okay, yeah.
I'll run again next year.
Okay.
So I'm starting to put together what that State of the City will look like, and a big part of the theme is going to be, listen, you come in, everybody gets worried, especially in something working. Hey, you got a new guy coming in. Like, is this going to be a turn this thing over? And obviously the goal was no. I used to tease everybody, you run for office for one of two reasons. You either want to completely turn the thing around, or you want to make sure no idiot does. So I was in the latter camp, but the challenge was coming into what was really successful and trying to figure out, hey, this is great. How do we really exponentially capitalize on this momentum?
Sure.
How do we get this thing going?
Right.
And it has been a fun 3 years.
Yeah,
We got busy fast.
Well, I bet it has. And listen, all of the metrics that I think are important, or which is stunning because most people don't look at them. And look, I'll tell you, people outpace me on their thoughts process on knowing all the normal metrics, of growth and these things. And I'm like, that's great. But like we talked about the arts, and we talked about what do people want and identity and things that are really important that literally stand the test of time.
Right.
This does not. To your point,
I have relatively zero interest in Woodstock being normal.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is like what we talked about.
Yes.
Cities now exist as consumables, which means if Woodstock follows the American pattern of ex-urban cities, 10 years from now, it's going to suck. You will not want to be there.
Agreed.
So how do we break that curve? And those are the metrics
so it's not so cyclic,
today.
right?
Yeah. Those are the metrics we've been talking about today. How do we lean into 5,000 years of human development pattern? How do we make sure that we're doing the things that drive people to recognize their own identity and reflection in the place they are?
Right on.
If you do that, there's no reason this place can't continue to be exactly what it is and better.
I agree.
Our best days are ahead.
Yeah, I agree, which is interesting because
these are pretty good days.
I was going to say they are. What do you think from a bigger, broad perspective of? And I don't know how. And this ain't a political thing, really. I mean, it's all tied in, of course.
It's a political gig.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, well, because now I always say levers are pulled on a federal level. It used to be when they would pull a lever, it was years before it trickled down.
Right.
Now it's not. It's almost the same year people get in office, they can affect change all the way to Main Street.
Sure.
So we've been in a little bit of a stagflation kind of deal.
Right.
How do you deal with that on a city level?
Yeah.
What do you do for those things? And you sort of alluded to it, like in the situation we're in now with affordable housing. Okay, well, condos, they're having a density, but still with ownership.
Right.
You still have to have that standard, which will then create that identity and not a transient kind of deal. Because BTR is a big deal.
Uh-huh.
And by the way, it is a winning strategy for them things that we talked about that we necessarily don't care about. But BTR is a winning strategy for investors.
Great way to drive a return at the cost of America.
That's it. That's exactly right.
You're eroding the financial security of this country.
You hit it.
And I get it. If I'm thinking solely as an investor, it's a great return.
Right.
But that's where I come back to. We can't pretend American housing was raw Adam Smith capitalism.
That's right.
Raw Adam Smith capitalism, and I'm a capitalist.
Of course.
The private sector has been very good to me.
Yeah, of course.
But I'm an American capitalist. Teddy Roosevelt recognized monopoly is a bad thing. It isn't capitalism.
That's right.
Raw capitalism left on its own indefinitely builds oligarchy because it centralizes capital.
Oh, of course.
And so American capitalism recognizes checks and balances in the same way that we do in everything. That's the genius of the founding system.
Yeah,
here,
I know.
is that we recognize that we build institutions that drive our own greed and ego against each other for the betterment of everyone.
I love that.
American capitalism does the same thing. When you remove the checks and balances, you get raw Adam Smith capitalism that works really well for the butcher and baker.
Right.
But at scale, centralizes capital, builds oligarchy, and results in exactly the lack of freedom you have in dictatorship.
It sure does. Do y'all have some kind of mechanisms that y'all, is there some way to sort of, and look, I'm not a fan of, what's his name, BlackRock, Finch, or whatever his name is. I obviously, but is there some mechanism you have in place that sort of that you can fight that? Is it just to say, hey, we just don't want you having BTR here. We're not going to allow that sort of stuff.
Again, I'll never say never because the right project comes through, and
makes sense at the time.
Yeah, exactly. We haven't approved BTR or an apartment complex since I've come into office, but that doesn't mean we wouldn't. So, and I try to be clear about that because what I never want to do is stand on a stage and say never, 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 and somebody go, said no, that's not.
I think
right project, right time, right place, right context.
I think you're smart and honest, and people try and play the political games of, you're hedging or you're being a politician, but it's not. Nobody knows what tomorrow brings. It's like, here's my philosophy. I don't want to do that.
I don't feel morally or legally good about telling somebody indefinitely this product would never be good there, because if they bring the right product, that's
it
a
could
good
be
thing.
right
In general. The rule for me is that ownership is the most important component in housing. And so if you're bringing a product that doesn't offer that opportunity for the people who are going to be living there, you'd better have a really compelling narrative and really compelling product offering.
Agreed.
And those could exist. I don't know. Please bring your plans to Woodstock. If you want to invest in our city, I want to see what you're doing, what you want to bring. But
let's see what it looks like.
But ownership is my number one priority. If you boil my administration down, what do I hope is the legacy this one leaves behind?
Which
that is the variable that drives all American policy.
Totally agree. And there is a BTR, and I think that it is a winning kind of deal because I'm thinking of there's a battery plant out past Cartersville and all they're doing, and so when you BTR that because you're bringing tons of
transient workforce
and all, it sort of makes sense. And I kind of dig it because it's solving a problem. But it absolutely hits all the markers you said. There is no identity in that.
I was to say, if you don't think it'll change the fabric of that community,
it certainly will. And
it'll build a tax base, but it won't build a whole lot more.
Oh, you're so right. And I think they're hoping they can overcome that with their town of Cartersville, and it's out a little bit, and so it'll be just housing for the workers there.
Not every neighborhood, not every county, not every geography has to feel like the downtown of an identity-driven city.
For sure.
But if we don't think that's what the dramatic majority of people in Woodstock are trying to drive, then we're not paying attention.
Yeah, I agree.
They want an identity-driven city.
Oh,
we're building that. We're building a sense of place.
I don't live there, but my business is there, and I want it, and I love it. And my address is still Woodstock, so it's funny you said
you're in what I like to call Metro Woodstock. You got about 120,000 people who live with a Woodstock address, and the number
is 120,000.
Yeah, just about. Number of those people who call to go. I voted for you for mayor, so you better. I hope you didn't. You don't live in the city.
right. That's awesome. Well, that brings me to something. So Metro Woodstock's 120. The county is 280-ish. So by far, Woodstock is
we are the largest city and the economic engine of this county. Now, Canton proper is just behind us. We're at about 40,000. I think they're at 38 and change.
Is that right?
They're 18 square miles. We're 13 square miles.
Okay. So they have a little bigger.
They've got more geography to play in. But we're an oddity in that our economic center and largest city is not the government seat. Canton's the government seat for the county. So we did not build our city off of a governmental headquarters. We built our city off of honestly, a forgotten train stop and a forgotten Main Street.
And I love that.
We told entrepreneurs to come and say yes, and they did.
I love that.
And it worked.
I love that because I told you I'm from Marietta, and so the Marietta Square, while it was just businesses, it's become a governmental, kind of industry, which is okay.
I feel for Canton and this is going to sound anti-county. I don't mean that at all. The county's been a great partner for us. I really enjoy working with them.
Yeah.
But I love not having a roommate. So I feel for Canton in that they both have to live in the same geography.
They sure do.
I love that even our city hall isn't on Main Street.
Right.
So we don't eat up prime real estate with government offices in our city. And that's
let it be the city.
Isn't that awesome?
Oh, it's fantastic. That's how it should be.
Private sector, capitalist driven.
Because the public, you're supposed to be supporting the people, right?
You're never going to build a sense of identity with a courthouse.
Oh, God, that's a great saying. So, I was looking at my watch because I don't want to keep you. I appreciate your time. Give us the what do you so you want to be mayor again?
Yes, sir.
And you want to. What is your philosophy for going forward? Is it still same philosophy, being open to what comes around the pike?
Yes, sir.
With a presidential election, things could change.
Sure.
Hopefully, they do change for the better, no matter how that shakes out.
Yes, sir.
So give us a spill on what going forward you're looking for. Are there big, cool projects that you're thinking about that you can share?
It's a great question. So we've got a lot of really cool projects we're going under right now in Woodstock. It's hilarious. We've sat this long, didn't talk about parking deck. We haven't talked about infrastructure projects. We haven't talked about diverging diamonds and roundabouts.
I told you I want to do it again, but I wanted to know you.
We will do it. No, this has been wonderful. Thank you for it.
Of course.
So we are undergoing, like I said, the largest parks and trail investment in our city's history. Everything from connecting down into the Silver Comet Trail. That means you'll be able to ride a bike from Woodstock to Alabama.
I heard that going down 92,
yes, sir,
right?
We're building it right now. You're 18 months out. We've got 12 or 13 different trail segments that are underway right now. You've got a 100-acre park offering getting built out off of Trickham, from Trickham Road to Woodlands on both sides of Little River. That is a generational investment. We'll hand that down to our great grandkids.
Love that.
We've got 633 space parking deck being built downtown.
Yep.
The largest in the county. Not that I'm showing off. We've got which will be free parking, by the way.
Which, by the way, I would think there was some gymnastics to get that thing done. Some mental gymnastics.
All of these things come with gymnastics, but we're getting them done. We're not waiting around. We've got a sense of urgency is the theme of this administration. So we've got that going. We've got you've got more private sector investment in the city right now than we've ever seen at any one given time. Our economy in 2019 was $2.2 billion total. We were at $3.7 billion in 2022.
Kidding. That's fantastic.
3-year period. So the city is exploding, both private and public sector. The number of both by total investment and quantity of projects, the number of infrastructure projects and investment we're undergoing right now is larger than we've ever seen in 127 years.
Good.
So we've got a lot we're doing right now.
Good.
We are not done.
Any stadiums coming in?
I don't have a stadium for you yet. Give me time.
Yeah. Well, listen, I wish you well. I appreciate all your hard work. I appreciate you being open. One thing when I thought about this, I'm talking to some of the folks in the economic development office and folks like that.
Yes, sir.
You know, but I thought, man, I want to reach out to Michael. You're so open about it, and I know it's you know, mayor and small town kind of politics and stuff. But I appreciate you being open and coming in. I think, like all the things, I like you a whole lot based on, like I said, the metrics that we don't just, you know, learn and, you know, 101 kind of stuff. All these other things that are important, vastly more important.
Yes,
right. But I love the fact that you're open and you're willing to talk to people and you come to these things and
thank you for
that. Yeah, it matters.
Thank you.
You know, we sort of see it, and I get there's time restraints and logistics on your national politics and things like that,
Sure.
but there's nothing better than being able to talk to people that are stepping up and doing those roles, you know.
I live in the center city. I work there. It is, we have, I used to show off when I was in the State House, we had a citizen legislature. Yeah. We have a citizen mayor and council here.
Right on.
I'm serving neighbors. And that's the fun, is that when somebody comes and talks to you, you know, this is a neighbor. We got to sit and talk.
Right on.
So thank you. I'm appreciative of my neighbor asked me to come hang out and
talk.
I'm
absolutely. Well, look, I hope we do it again.
Thank you.
I just want to thank you a lot.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it.